From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
What are you telling your team?
Curt Schilling's ego and lack of business savvy were key factors in the demise of 38 Studios. A 5,000-word autopsy of the defunct video game company in the latest Boston magazine offers extensive new details about what went wrong. Our guest on the first half of Newsmakers landed a 2-hour interview with the former Red Sox legend. We're joined by author and senior editor of Boston Magazine, Jason Schwartz. Then, Target 12 obtained hundreds of pages of documents once deemed confidential that reveal 38 Studios was drowning in red ink long before its troubles burst onto the public radar.
Might not have been caviar, but they were living high on the with the taxpayer dollars.
WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi breaks down the new revelations, and we get reaction from Governor Lincoln Chafee this week on Newsmakers.
Good morning. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Joining me on the panel this week, my colleague, WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi. Good morning, everyone. Jason, good morning. Thanks for joining us on the program.
Thanks, guys, for having me. Appreciate it.
Great article. Boston Magazine, well reported, well written.
Broke a lot of new ground for those of us who've been following this story.
And we're providing a link to it on our Newsmakers page. The centerpiece, of course, to the article was you sat down with Curt Schilling, 2-hour interview after he coached his daughter's softball game, and I picture the two of you sitting in the metal lawn chairs, as you wrote about.
That was basically it, yeah.
You got to tell us, I mean, how did this one come about? How did that interview happen?
Well, you know, I'd been working on that story a long time, not as long as you guys, perhaps, but Curt was the last interview I did, I think. I had been, in touch with his people, letting them know that I'd been talking to a lot of people who worked at 38 Studios and had some things to say about him that were maybe not the nicest things. So I think he wanted a chance to respond to that. That being said, you'd really have to ask him to find out why, I think.
And he said, literally, meet me at the softball field?
Yeah. I don't usually go to girls' softball games on Saturday mornings, but yeah, he happened to be coaching a tournament there that day. They were in between games, and he had a few hours, so it was convenient.
You did a great job explaining his demeanor in the piece, but for everyone here, describe what he was like.
He was in rough shape. He was feeling it. He teared up several times during our conversation, and he almost felt, I don't want to say broken, but he was he'd been through the ringer. I think he knew that he did something very bad to people he cared a lot about, and that doesn't change that he did a very bad thing, but he was clearly in a lot of pain over it.
Did you ask him if he felt he owed anyone an apology?
I didn't, but he's apologized a lot of times to his employees, I'll tell you that. But that being said, he's still not sort of satisfactorily, at least to me, answered the question of why didn't you give people warning? Those 400 people who worked for you that you cared so much about and now are so apologetic to, why didn't you let them know what was going on? And he really, all he can say is things were moving too fast. I didn't really know what to say. I didn't want to give bad information, and that's just not really satisfying.
Him or the CFO,
right.
Maybe you should have provided a little bit more warning.
That gets to the heart of what was fascinating me. You interviewed him, he got a chance to speak, and he still didn't come off looking that good. It seemed like he didn't understand business. His ego got in the way. He was over-optimistic based on the conversations you had with a lot of people. How would you describe Curt Schilling as a businessman based on your reporting?
Well, not one that I would want to go into business with. How about that? The thing is, he was so successful playing baseball, and the remarkable thing, I think, is that he thought that would carry over. He thought, I know how to have success, so this will work if I just try hard enough, like baseball. And that obviously just couldn't be further from the truth. So
Ted and I sat down with Governor Lincoln Chafee this week, and I want to play a soundbite for you from that interview. We wanted to get his reaction to a series of documents that we got our hands on, and he directly referenced your article in this interview. This was his take of your piece. Take a listen.
Their spending rate, which we learned from the Boston article, how much they were spending on dinners and lunches, and so not only were they taking the money in, but spending it very, very wildly. And so not only was it a bad deal to begin with, but their spending habits were just not good. As they said, this just wasn't a startup atmosphere in the company where you really hunker down and you have macaroni and cheese, and that's what most startups do. This was very, very different. It might not have been caviar, but they were living high on the with the taxpayer dollars.
Living high on the taxpayer dollars, they should have been eating mac and cheese, didn't act like a startup. Do you agree with that characterization?
You know, I think the biggest issue, and I talked to a lot of people who work there, and a lot of people said to me it never felt like a startup. It felt like an established company. So the dollar spent, yeah, you need that money back. Obviously, they ran out of money. But I think the bigger issue was the culture. You know, and this is something Kurt said, and we quote him in the article, is it never had the feeling of a startup. They were very comfortable. He said almost, you know, invincible. I think that's the word he used.
Invulnerable.
Invulnerable,
Said,
there it is, yeah. Which is a strange posture for a company trying to do a very, very, very difficult thing.
Talk about some of the indicators that were not in line with being a startup. And one thing that struck me was no copay in the healthcare. I mean, very generous healthcare.
It's a great company to work for,
Absolutely.
right? as
yeah,
long
for
as
at least in the beginning.
Yeah, you know, they matched 401ks, the legal limit, free gym membership. When the company started out, they actually rented a couple houses near the Maynard office for people who were moving into town to sort of crash in. And that didn't last too long, but it sort of gives you an idea. And it also sort of brings up sort of the Greek tragedy element of this, I think, is that Kurt's instincts are to be a very generous person. And he's a very optimistic person, but sometimes those impulses went against better sense.
Yeah, there's a disconnect, it seems like, between he wanted to run, he talks about being Bill Gates rich, a Fortune 500 company, but he was also running a pre-revenue company, and it almost sounded like he didn't understand at times the difference there.
Right, and I don't think he understood how big his challenge was. That's the big thing, but he definitely seemed not to understand that, you know, you behave differently if you're a pre-revenue. If you're not expecting revenue for, you know, 4 or 5 years down the line, then you just, you know, you can't act like, you know, you can't be Google. You know, you can't be Microsoft. So.
One of the big sources in your story that was also fascinating, a trove of private Facebook messages that 38 Studios employees were exchanging as the collapse happened. I mean, what was sort of the story those told?
You know, those actually came up. Kurt did an interview on WEEI, which, you know, was not maybe the hardest hitting interview. They were very defensive of him, Dennis and Callahan. And he's been paid in the past to be on that show too. So he had told them, you know, through a Facebook message board that was set up for the whole company after the crash, basically told them that he was going on. And there was just sort of, you know, a wave of emotion that came out after that. A lot of people were still really upset about what happened to him. Some people were upset that he was going on WEI to explain what was going on instead of actually telling them. And it just came out, you know, the CEO of the company, Jen McClain, attacked him, Vice President Bill Moracek attacked him. Several other people got involved, and it was a pretty ugly scene.
We're talking to Jason Schwartz, senior editor of Boston Magazine. He has a great article in the latest edition of Boston Magazine on the demise of 38 Studios. In your reporting, was there anything specific to Rhode Island that you left out because it wasn't relevant to your readers? Yeah,
you know, we were pretty focused on 38 Studios itself, but I think, you know, we talked about, the big question is where Rhode Island was with oversight on this. IBM was supposed to be providing quarterly reports to the state. Actually, an interesting thing, like you guys say, is that originally those reports were supposed to be written down and delivered, and then at some point, actually shortly after the agreement was made, they were switched to just oral reports in meetings, which is just sort of strange. IBM declined to talk to me, but there are a lot of questions of why this
else declined to talk to you that you wish was part of this article that you tried to get?
Oh, I would have loved to talk to Governor Chafee.
Chafee or Kachiri?
Well, you know, I think if anyone can find Governor Kachiri, I think he's like in a hole somewhere, right?
But Governor Chafee denied your request for an interview.
Yeah, he did. And, you know, I would have loved to talk to him because Kurt had some less than nice things to say about him, you know, which are in the piece. But yeah, I think there are a lot of questions about where Rhode Island was with the oversight with this, and also just, you know, one thing I didn't get into, but what on earth they were thinking when they gave over the original $75 million. It's just
and
ridiculous.
That remains the big question. I mean, even you almost posed it as a question within the story. It's an outstanding question. Because if I have this right, it's clear in your story they were running out of money around the time before they got the deal with Rhode Island, right? They could have been facing this existential crisis then, and then the EDC swooped in here.
Yeah, if not for the state of Rhode Island, we would have been having this conversation in Massachusetts, thankfully with no taxpayer money involved because the state turned that down. But they very well could have gone out of business years ago if not for Rhode Island. So the big question, I mean, for the first 3 or 4 years of the company, they were having meetings with investors every week. Kurt Schilling obviously could get a meeting with anybody. he has some good stories.
One of the VCs you talked to said he went partly to meet Curt Schilling.
Yeah. He did. That guy in particular, it wasn't in the story, but he played baseball in college and wanted to go meet him. So everyone said no for 3 years, 4 years. Just a line of investors marching in the door, marching out, saying no. State of Massachusetts, Governor Patrick said no, and somehow Rhode Island said yes after everyone else said no, and it's just really a head scratcher.
Someone who almost said yes, apparently, they claim, is a $15 million mystery investor at the very, very end. This came up in a bankruptcy hearing I attended in Delaware. It's mentioned in your story. The identity of that person isn't in your article, but now I gather Schilling may have revealed to you who we think it was?
Yeah, give or take a typo. We believe it was Rick Brady, who's a very wealthy man about town, down here.
For people at home, former CEO of Nortec, on the Roger Williams University board. We haven't heard from him, so I haven't confirmed it.
Right, but the thing I'd say is to take any claim by 38 Studios of how close a deal was with a grain of salt. Because one of the things that we talk about in my article is, in those years meeting with all those investors, Curt walked out of almost every meeting thinking, this was the one. I hit a home run. Those guys loved it. We're going to get a deal now, and it never happened. Even with Take-Two, who at the very end, they also thought they had lined up to produce a sequel to the console game they produced out of the studio in Baltimore, Reckoning. Curt told me that they were ready for final sign-off. It was done deal, going to happen.
What did Take-Two tell you?
Take-Two said, I don't know what they're talking about. They said there were no negotiations. So it was like, Curt and Take-Two were on a different planet.
On the topic of the games, one thing that stood out to me in your article, speaking of Copernicus and the early stages that it was in, the impression I got was Schilling didn't think the game was all that fun.
Yeah.
And that's a scary thing to Rhode Islanders when you think that's what we invested in.
Right. I was frankly shocked when he said that, because I think I had asked him a question about what, if their pre-production cycle was too long, and he sort of segued into talking about the game not being fun. So it was weighing on him, apparently. But yeah, it looked beautiful, but the actual things you could do in it just weren't that engaging yet. He was sure it was going to get there. He was very confident it was going to happen. But 6 years later, if it's not fun yet, what's the point?
Right. I got to ask you before we run out of time. This actually, again, you can read it online. But when does it hit the newsstands? When can people go and pick it up?
It will be out on newsstands on Tuesday.
And do you? When you look at the 38 Studios story, I mean, is it a story of hubris? Is it a story? We have a lot of conversations down here. Is it incompetence or something nefarious, something evil? Corruption. What do you think?
We'll find out. Curt denies any wrongdoing. There are investigations by the state and the feds. So when they're through, we'll find out if there was any wrongdoing. So it's the classic argument: were they dumb or corrupt? Right.
Right.
It's hubris is a lot of it. I think overconfidence. What one guy described to me as rampant and destructive optimism, and I think that really sort of sums it up, is that Curt thought he could do it all the way. He thought this was like a baseball game, and it just couldn't have been further from that.
Jason, at what cost do you think he's a bust?
That's what he says. I mean, he didn't take out his checkbook and show me, but he claims if he had the money to pay back all those employees, they're collectively owed about $1.5 million. He says he would have done it if he had the money. So that's not a good thing for him, because he could be held accountable for those wages, and he's being sued by Citizens Bank for $2.4 million.
Jason Schwartz of Boston Magazine, great article, well done, and we appreciate you joining us on the program.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
All right, when we come back, documents that were once deemed confidential shed a little bit of light of just how bad things were at 38 Studios before it officially imploded. When we come back and dissect those with WPRI.com's Ted Nisi. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. As part of a public records request, the Economic Development Corporation released nearly 1,100 pages of memos, emails, and financial data on 38 Studios. The documents show the company spent $133 million since its founding, but took in only $27 million in revenue. We also found company executives were far too optimistic about their revenue projections, falsely predicting they would rake in more than $100 million in 2012. Also striking is the fact that 38 Studios continued to spend upwards of $5 million a month, even when it was clear they were drowning in red ink. WPRI.com reporter Ted Nisi joins me now to dissect these findings. Ted, it seems like the company was coming off the rails way before even state government knew what was going on.
If it was ever on the rails, right?
Yeah.
Because you look at these documents, they were spending at such a rapid clip, and you hear one of the most telling things Jason told us there in the first segment. The company was running out of money in early 2010 before Governor Kacheri, the EDC, swooped in, gave them the loan, and put them through. I mean, that tells you this company was never on a sustainable path and was always, one failed investment away from collapsing. So it raises just the same question. We keep saying it raises questions, but it's just what was being thought, what was looked at, what books were it, why was this done?
And we know, too, that it wasn't that there was a lack of opinions coming into the governor's office about whether or not they should have been investing in this company in the first place.
Yeah, the Journal this morning, we're taping on Friday, has a story about Sean Weston, who's or Eston it might be, who's a financial advisor inside the EDC. I have those documents as well, those emails we do, and they were raising questions that he said, I have less information on this $75 million proposed deal than I do on a $10,000 micro. Joe's hardware store expanding into Warren or something. He would have more information on that than $75 million. I think, if anything, some of the EDC employees are going to be vindicated by this because it's going to show the low rank and file in that agency were saying, hold on a sec, what are we doing? We could get, taken to the rails if a $5,000 bond goes off the thing, and you want us to give $75 million away? But at the top, the people who wanted it were the people who could get it approved, and it went through.
Yeah, and the perception as of now, right now, is it was just rammed through the process to get it approved, and we've had an open invitation to former Governor Don Kacheri to join us for an interview, because we certainly would like to hear about that. $133 million is a big figure that you and I reported earlier this week. That's money that they spent since they were founded in 2006. You talked to industry experts. Is this out of line with what the type of game that Schilling had dreamt of that he was trying to create?
No. According to these analysts, he wanted to make, we all know this lingo now, a massively multiplayer online game, an MMO, like World of Warcraft. Those are extremely expensive to make and extremely hard to make a hit. Our producer Nick, we were talking beforehand, and he pointed out, sort of like founding a movie studio and making your first movie, Avatar. You go for the most difficult possible thing to do and the most expensive. So they said they weren't surprised that he had cost $133 million to get this far. They were surprised that the company was able to keep going without private financing. If you think about it, the only significant investors that were ever attracted to 38 Studios were Curt Schilling and Rhode Island. They couldn't get, as Jason just said, they had VCs walking in and out of that company for years. They said, no, I don't want to touch this.
So that's $100 million. We're looking at an extra $33 million that was spent before they ran out. We saw $27 million in revenue. Where do we think that money came from?
I think that's Electronic Arts giving them an advance on the first game that came out in February. They get about $27 million in advance based on the future royalties that are expected from it, and then that advance was sort of being paid back as games actually sold. So they got the money up front, and then over time, that's why there was no money coming in after the game came out.
When you were in Delaware for the bankruptcy filing, correct me if I'm wrong, that's one of the things that came out at this, is that they sold 1.3 million games. Their revenue projections, it looks like, were based on that. They had to hit $2 million to pay back that advance to EA, and then after that, it was going to be gravy for the company. That never happened.
Did not. Right? We were looking at these earlier this week, Tim. Almost $20 million a month in revenue by the end of this year. Very hard to see how, based on what actually transpired before the collapse in May, how that could have happened. The big game, the second game, wasn't going to be done until next June of 2013, and the first game, as one of the executives acknowledged at the bankruptcy hearing, was never going to crack $2 million, which means they were never going to see any more money from it. So where that $20 million a month that they were planning on was going to come from later this year, no sign of that.
All right, Ted, we sat down with Governor Lincoln Chafee about our findings, and I want to play a rather striking soundbite from that. To me, it's the strongest words yet on why he, lack of a better word, canned Keith Stokes, the former head of the EDC. Here's what he had to say. What does this say about the oversight or lack thereof from the Economic Development Corporation?
There was a balance between micromanaging them, which I would be open to criticize if I was in there asking them questions and micromanaging them, or write the checks and hope they succeed. And having Keith Stokes as director of EDC, who was the biggest cheerleader of the deal, I thought struck the proper balance. If anybody was going to be on their side and help them succeed and make sure good things are happening would be Keith Stokes. When I found out that wasn't the case, I made a quick change at EDC.
If anybody was going to be on their side and make sure things were going well, Keith Stokes, that wasn't happening. The words from the governor. Is the translation here, I relied on this guy and he let me down?
Undoubtedly. And I think one of the striking things that's coming out in these emails, and there'll be more stories, the Journal and us in the days to come, I'm sure, is the almost obsequiousness of EDC leadership. Keith, other people there, toward a company they had given $75 million to. You know, as one entrepreneur I talked to here in Providence said, if I got $75 million from a venture capitalist, I couldn't go to the bathroom without them knowing what I was doing. Everything I did, they would have sign off, they would be able to know where the money was going in and out. You get the sense from EDC, 38 Studios says, no, we don't want to provide you with those documents. So EDC says, okay, that's fine. What if we did this instead? He mentioned the IBM monitoring deal being changed to oral reports from written reports. I mean, you don't get the sense that the EDC felt empowered for one reason or another to keep tabs on this as closely as they needed to. And frankly, as I think it comes through in these documents too, I'm not sure once the deal was signed, it's hard to see how it was ever salvageable, because if the company never had a business plan that could work because they had so much money they still needed to spend, our money wasn't going to be enough, no private investors want to come in, they're sunk from the start.
Is that sort of a common theme that you're seeing in the emails of the document dump, that 38 Studios was very standoffish, particularly with government, with EDC, and being less than cooperative maybe when it was all hitting the fan?
There was a near desperation in some of these emails, Tim, where EDC is asking them to come show up at a Boosting Rhode Island business event, you know, give an interview to a magazine that's writing about Rhode Island, be a corporate citizen like you promised. And 38 Studios being like, maybe we have the time, no, we really don't, etc. Again, a company that had $75 million, or 50 they actually received, backed by taxpayers. And then as things were getting worse in April and May, the company being slow to provide documents, but being very pushy with the EDC about, why aren't you guys meeting all night to figure this out for us, to get us saved? I mean, it was a weird relationship.
On the first half, we had on Jason Schwartz, and his article talked about that $15 million, you know, white knight angel investor that was going to come and inject money into the company last minute, but then the governor, he says, scared that investor off. The documents show the company was spending upwards of $5 million a month, and I want to play another bite from Governor Chafee from our interview earlier this week. The documents, again, $5 million a month, even toward the end, which brings into question, I suppose, Schilling's claims that he had that angel investor waiting in the wings, or that it was really going to do much good. Here's what the governor had to say about that. Looking at these numbers, do you think that $15 million would have done much good?
No, absolutely not, or I would have done it. I wanted the company to succeed. We were in deep. So if any kind of film tax credits could have helped them, I would have been in favor. But I just didn't see the evidence that another penny or another million or another 10 million could get them to a firm financial footing. I never had that confidence, and so I was reluctant to get in any deeper.
What about even buying the company one more month for a more dignified end to the company? We're learning really heartbreaking stories about a woman who's pregnant, and doctor says, hey, you're out of health insurance. People who now have to pick up their old mortgages, you know, they work for a couple of weeks hoping they can hang on. Had that conversation ever occurred in your office? Let's buy him a month.
Tim, the taxpayers in Rhode Island are in tough circumstances. The economy's not good here. People are struggling. They're stressed out. To ask them to help out a company, many of whom came from out of state, so they can get an extra month, I don't think would be a good business decision. I don't think the Rhode Island taxpayer would support that.
Ted, let me ask you the same question that I asked Governor Chafee in that interview, and that is, do you think, even if that investor was going to put in $15 million in the end, do you think that would have done much good?
There is certainly an argument out there that the smarter move by the state would have been fund them for another month or two so that you keep the team in place. The team was the core value of 38 Studios at this point. Keep them going, give them a little influx of cash somehow, and everything else. That said, let's say the $15 million came through, and Schilling says that was reliant on getting the $5 million from tax credits. You got $20 million with that. Well, just take the $5 million a month burn rate times another 12 months to get the game done. That's $60 million. Where was another $40 million going to come for this company? I mean, one analyst we talked to said, they should have had enough cash on hand a year ago to get the game done. They were going, at this point, they could have gotten a few months out from the game and run out of cash again. So without that ability to know you could fund yourself to the end, it's really hard to see how this was going to work.
And 30 seconds left. Do we have any idea of what the money was spent on?
A little bit. Schilling was clearly spending a lot of money on travel and entertainment. We also know that the whole healthcare was very good, but most of it was R&D. It's people. That's what the analysts say. It's people, salaries, benefits, to keep your people in place to make the game. That was the core cost, and that again goes why I don't think it was nefarious. I think it was just a bad business plan. Well,
WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi, thank you for joining us on the program. Our first half guest was Jason Schwartz. Had a great article on the demise of 38 Studios. We'll have a link to it on our website, WPRI.com. For Ted Nesi, I'm Tim White. We will see you next week on Newsmakers.